welcome to the Coach Gravina podcast. So this is episode 1, and I am joined with a special guest, Paris Joanides. Alright, so I will introduce him. So a little bit about Paris, and he will go into detail about who he is and sort of how we met. But Paris at the moment, is an NBL1 Assistant Coach. Alright, so he's been in the game for 10 plus years of coaching and 10 plus years as a player. So I'll let him introduce himself and a little bit about how we met and his experience so far as a past player and now as a current coach. All right, so welcome, Paris.
Thank you for having me on the first ever Coach Gravina podcast. I'm excited to see where this is going to go, and just kind of really like the format and what you're going to do with it. I think it's an amazing opportunity for obviously players, coaches, and just anyone who likes the game to get involved and just listen to some people just talk about basketball. So like Chris said, I was a player for, I guess, 10 plus years. Like everyone else, I started in juniors. You get asked to come to NITP camps and that kind of thing and state trials and that stuff. So I played all my juniors. And then in my final year, obviously I was missing the game of basketball after top age 18s and decided, hey, let's try coaching, and started with the domestic team at Bulleen Boomers, and coached some domestic teams there. And then how I got into Friday night was just someone needed a coach. So I had the 18-4s, or started at the 18-4 girls at Bulleen. And each year kind of progressed up. So 18-4s, 18-3s. Then I moved over to the boys team, or boys side, and did 18-2s. And then a coach from Bulleen decided that he was going to leave and take up a head coaching gig for the Youth League women at Diamond Valley, and asked me to come across with him and be his assistant. So him and I did that for 3 years. And then after Youth League, I was the 16-1 head coach at Diamond Valley for 3 years, and this was my final year. And then, like you said, I'm now an NBL1 Assistant Coach, and looking forward to the season ahead.
Yeah, awesome. So in regards to, your coaching career at the moment, let us know. So, for myself as, I'd say an up and coming coach trying to learn the ropes, learn new things. And I say to myself every day, or every time I am coaching, I'm looking to sort of develop myself and my knowledge and new ways. There's two parts to this question. Firstly, who is someone, or who are some people that you did learn from? And how did you find that avenue of learning? Like, did you put yourself out there? Were you just lucky enough, to be in the right place at the right time? What are some key ways you learned as a coach?
So I guess to answer your first question, I guess like every young coach, or everyone's starting to get into coaching. It could be basketball, it could be a different sport. I think you take aspects of how you were coached as a player, because that's how it was done when you were playing. So you try and emulate the drills that you were doing when you were playing, kind of the mannerisms and things that you take as well. And obviously with times changing a little bit, obviously there's been a big coaching shift that's kind of happened, and it's obviously been a gradual coaching shift. But I guess for me, was I really, putting myself out there? Well, as a young coach, I just thought that I knew it all. Like I knew everything and I was the best and everything else. But you learn very quickly that in basketball, you don't know everything. And you can say that you know everything and you'll be lying, because I've been coaching for I guess 8 years as a rep coach, and then some senior year program stuff. And you're always learning. Every year you're learning. Every year you're developing. Every training that you have, you get better. So I guess for me, some mentors in my life or early on in my coaching career was a guy by the name of Brendan Jackson. He came over and he was the guy that took me over to Diamond Valley. And then another mentor of mine is Alan McCautry, who's now, well, was the DOC, Director of Coaching at Diamond Valley, and is now over at Kilsyth. But him and I, like, didn't really get along because I thought I knew everything. And as he was giving me feedback, I was just like, well, who's this guy? I'm not going to listen to him. But I eventually started to open up and listen to him and like expanded my horizons and my basketball knowledge. And good things have happened. Like I've coached some unbelievable players, some kids that have gone off and played college and yeah. So I guess they're probably my two mentors. The second question regarding like, I guess, where do you find knowledge, or was I open and I guess, did I put myself out there? Not really. I'm kind of really introvert. Not many people would think that of me. But I mean, you need to kind of have a little bit of confidence in your own ability as a coach. Because if you don't have that ability or that confidence in your own ability, and it doesn't need to be amazing confidence, you just need to believe that, like, I guess where young coaches struggle is that their belief that they are good enough. Like I've coached against some terrific coaches that have never coached a ones team before, but they're bloody incredible. And they like do their research. They're open to listening. And I guess that's what you need to be as a coach. You just need to be open to suggestions, and take on board criticism. Like, I mean, you've done it as a player where people have criticized you and that kind of thing. And I guess as a player, it's a little bit different to being a coach where, I mean, like you take criticism and you've got competitive drive as a player. But then as a coach, like when someone criticizes you about what you're doing, you take it all on board and you're just like, oh, like, what's going on here? Like, I've never had this before, blah, blah, blah. You just need to be open to accepting feedback and things like that. But you would have been through it. As a player and obviously you now coaching as well, you've probably gone through some criticism and people being like, oh, why is he doing this? Why is she doing that? So
it's a tricky experience, especially starting off. And you know, like you said, when you think you know everything in the start and you get told this, you've got to try and do this, and you know, different coaches go about how they construct the criticism in different ways. So yeah, I can agree with you on that, especially, you know, the learning phase. But I think that is a key takeaway as well, is be open to criticism and listen. I would say, you know, listen to all feedback and, you know, pick and choose where you think it resonates with you and apply it and use it and give it a go. So I think, you know, and moving from that, would you say the same is as a player, you know, in the sense that, you know, for advice for some players from a coaching perspective, you know, there are a lot of times where, especially, you know, training games, where you are going to, you know, give that feedback. What's some tips you can give to the players? Because there are a lot of different coaching styles. And as I mentioned, a lot of coaches do go about, you know, their criticism in different ways. What's some advice you can give to some players on, you know, taking the advice and how to go about that?
Well, I mean, I guess a cliche at the moment is like one positive, then a negative, and then a positive. And I think it's just been done to death in terms of like the aspect for a coach to give feedback. Like, feedback is determined on like what the player or where the player wants to get to, really. And what I mean by that is, if you're a really good player and you want to go somewhere, you're just after feedback. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of feedback is given to you, whether it's positive, negative, or that kind of thing, whether it's in a positive, negative, positive sandwich, however you want to frame it. You just want some feedback on, hey, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? Now, from a player perspective, players just need to understand that coaches want the best for them. I mean, we don't get into coaching for the money. Like, we give back, or we're coaches to give back to the game that like allowed us to have fun growing up, and that gave us opportunities and that kind of thing. So I think players just need to be open to feedback. And obviously there's a way to give players feedback, and that kind of thing. But having critical feedback is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Do I understand, or do I get that sometimes negative feedback like can be taken to heart? Yes, I do. But I mean, it's how you as the player interpret that feedback, and not all coaches, well, majority of coaches are there to give back to players and that kind of thing. So there's no like malicious intent when feedback's given. Obviously, there's a right way to give feedback and a wrong way to give feedback. Like, you're not gonna tell a kid, like, as feedback, like, you're not going to put swearing in there because like, why would you? Like, you're not going to swear at a kid. But yeah, just be open to feedback. It probably hasn't really answered your question.
No, it's a tricky one because, I can say for myself, with a couple examples of coaches who, for example, David Crow, and I had him at the, under 16s for the twos at Bulleen, and his style of coaching, was quite, it was quite loud, and it came off as aggressive, but deep down at that time, it felt like, okay, this guy's just after me. He's just pushing me. He's just trying to pressure me into making mistakes and this and that. But after that experience, and, I think after I hit about 18 to 19, I did reflect on it. And especially now, actually recently, I thought what he was saying and how I was going about it was actually out of passion and love for the game and for me to get better. So it's really tough in that time, to be caught up in, okay, coach is hounding me, they're on me, they're yelling at me, they're screaming at me, and that sort of thing. But it's, it is hard, and I think it does need to be sort of, let known a lot more that those times are out of passion, out of, wanting improvement for the player. So yeah, it's a tricky situation, and there are tough scenarios with that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, obviously, heat of the situation and that kind of thing is going to dictate tone, to players and that kind of thing. I mean, like, players aren't coaches, so they're not going to, I guess, like, they're going to obviously feel pressure, but it's going to be a different pressure to what a coach is going to feel.
Yeah.
Because I guess the competitive drive for a coach is that we want to win, we want to win, we want to win. So sometimes the tone of feedback can also be something as well to consider, and just how you direct your tone to a player. But then again, some players need to understand, like, hey, the situation. So, yeah, in terms of, well, like, the heat of the battle, I guess, like, don't really take it to heart, because, like, there's pressure on, and everyone feels pressure, and players make mistakes, and coaches make mistakes as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so.
And I did skip it, but for those who don't know, Paris in high school was my senior coach for year 12 for inter-school basketball. So, he can explain the story of at a tournament at Dandenong, for one of our tournaments that we did play in. So, do you want to explain a bit about your coaching style during that, and I'll sort of answer in terms of how I responded to the feedback after the first game.
Well, do I have to?
Yeah, against Box Hill.
Do I have to give feedback or no?
No,
do I have to say it? Or?
Yeah. Explain just a general scenario of what occurred in my playing style during that game, and how.
Was it against Box Hill?
In terms of, well, I'll speak about it, but in terms of,
mate, we weren't on. Was it Box Hill?
Yeah. So
I swear to God, or are we talking about
no.
What happened in, like, on court, like the old courts, like near court 1?
No. So it was
in that little shed.
It was with. So we played Box Hill, and I came out, I wouldn't say as aggressive as usual. And, I wasn't, at that time, my role was to be a scorer. And I thought, I was quite pressured. I felt, by the other team, by Box Hill, they were up and in, they were long, they were athletic, they were the best team at that point. Got nervous, didn't play well, was scared to shoot the ball and take on the game. And, Paris sort of drilled into me and he said, I won't repeat, but, he was quite harsh on me and said, Chris, pretty much step up your game. And I think at that time I understood, okay, he's saying this out of passion and being constructive with it, even though at that time it came across harsh. But from that game, I took it on to the next game and had that improvement. So,
look, I think I do remember the moment, and there was some words thrown in there. But I mean, I think in your case, you just needed to have some belief, and I mean, I was going to say whatever I needed to say in order for you to feel like, hey, like Paris is here with me, like he believes in me. Let's just go out and do it.
Yeah.
Did you go off that game?
Yeah. Second game, played heaps better, I think.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, and main thing, we got the win. So, yeah, it was a good experience. But
and also we pushed Box Hill to a close score, which was nice from a public school. Push Box Hill. I was happy.
Good result. So, moving from that, there are tryouts coming up. And for all players across the EDJBA board. Now, people, I know a lot of players that I've spoken to. Some are feeling nervous, some are feeling confident. And I did a video on this on my Instagram. Speaking about some things I can recommend, or how I would go about it. What's something that you'd like to say to some players watching, and how they should go about tryouts and the sort of mindset going into it?
I did watch the video. I thought it was a really good video done in your car, mate. Didn't have time to do it in the office. So, mate, just getting content out there. I like it. So I guess with tryouts, like you said, it's nerve-wracking for players. And more than ever, because obviously with COVID and that kind of thing, players have missed 2 years of solid basketball and solid development. So people are just going to go out there and be all nervous and jittery and everything else. And obviously coaches are going to understand, because coaches have pretty much been out of the game for 2 years as well. So everyone's going to be rusty. If you don't play, you get rusty. If you don't coach, you get rusty. So it's the same thing. I guess what you need to do, and if you're obviously a player staying at a club, it's a little bit easier for you because you've already made those friendships and with other players within the playing group. So just going in and have a conversation with them before tryouts and that kind of thing. It doesn't even need to be basketball. Just get your mind off tryouts and get your mind off basketball. Would be the first thing. I guess the second thing, once we do get on court, and you mentioned it in your video as well, being a player that talks or communicates to their teammates is just something that is not overlooked as a coach. And what I mean by that is, if you're a player who's really talkative and communicates to teammates on the floor, it's basically just like an instant tick. Like, hey, I need to keep an eye on this guy or this girl. And it's even before they've even kind of seen your skill level and that kind of thing. So, like you mentioned talking, and you had it kind of down the bottom of your list and everything else. I would put that first. Like, if you're a really good talker and just show that you have a voice on a basketball court, that's incredible. Okay, because I mean, when we were playing, the really good teams, all of them would communicate to one another, and you'd be like, well, what the hell is going on here? And you'd come in, you would have the ball, you'd come off an on-ball screen, and they're all like, head, show, screen left. and everything else. And you'd be like, what the hell's going on here? Like, why is there 5 people talking when there's only 2 people in the action? And it was just hard to play against. And good teams that talk are just really hard to play against. What are your thoughts? Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think, you hit the nail on the head. You do stand out from it as well, especially, at a younger age group, in the 12s. And I think, you do see it progress into 14, 16, 18s. It is more common. But if you can start if you can start at a young age group, and it is something, you do put yourself out there, especially if not a lot of people are talking, yelling, that is constructive on the court. You're putting yourself ahead, and I think as well, even to put yourself ahead even more, if it is at a point where it is putting your team at an advantage on the offensive and defensive end, and especially on the sidelines. If you're cheering, you're supportive. And something I really look at is, okay, are you supporting when your team's up and going well and things are going well? Or when things are going bad, how is your body language? Are you talking? Those are the times I think are critical, because it's hard to get out of a slump during a game or during practice. More so a game, if you're down 10 in the fourth quarter, how do you react? And I think from talk and your body language, it can alter, how the game goes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you hit the nail right on the head where you said in terms of like, how are you when your team's down, and are you a head dropper, and your body language? Because like one person's body language can just be kind of like a virus that just goes through the team. But you see those teams that like a person hits a shot, they're all jump off the bench and high five each other and everything else. Like they're just incredible teams to play for. Because imagine like you just feel invincible. Like even if you make a mistake, like your team's just like, that's all right, go back, you're good. So like they're amazing teams to play for. I guess another thing at tryouts as well, when coaches do ask or kind of set up drills and that kind of thing, a lot of players are really hesitant to ask questions. And if they're in the front of the line, the normal inkling is to be like, well, I don't really want to embarrass myself here. I don't know what the drill is. Let me just stand at the back, see it a few times, and then go from there. And then once we get in and I've seen it a few times, I'm all good. Ask questions. Like if you're at the front of the line and you have no idea what's going on, ask the coach a question. Okay? Because maybe the explanation that the coach gave, maybe it just didn't make sense. And that's okay. But coaches would approve if you put your hand up and be like, hey, coach, I don't understand. Can you explain it again? And again, similar to the talking thing, like that shows that you've got willingness to ask a question, like, hey, why are we doing this, and that kind of thing. And coaches love to answer questions.
Yeah.
And again, that would be another thing that I would say to do in tryouts. Make sure you're talking on the court, and make sure if you don't know something, ask a question and find out what the answer is. Because it just sets you apart from everything else.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you just said, we're after communication with the player. It's boring for us, or I can say for myself as coaches, if you're constructing a drill and you're not getting feedback or questions from players. So I think that's pretty important as well. Now, something I'd say for the older age groups, I'd even say 14s and above, but it is quite hard, and we have spoken about this prior. Can you speak a bit about your advice on knowing your role as a player on a team? And we'll go from tryouts. Okay, what you think, how would you go into tryouts knowing your role? And then in a game sense, and then once you're at a team, understanding, okay, what is your role? How can you implement it into a team and stay focused in that?
Yeah, tough question. Like really tough question because I think it's reliant on the player, I guess, having a conversation with themselves of around their ability as a basketball player. Um, Not everyone can drop 40 points in a game of basketball, and that's fine. Like you said, what like there's many other roles. You could be a absolute beast on the wing as a like as a defender. You could be able to like box out and get a lot of rebounds. You could be able to maybe not put the ball on the floor, but if you're in the corner or you're open, you feel really confident and you can kind of knock that shot down consistently. Um, and again, or you come off a pick and roll and you're able to make decisions in the key. Again, it's like obviously you've got to match what your skill set is, and it's tough. It's probably like hard to do with juniors, obviously because of experience and everything else, and they don't really know their playing style yet. But for seniors, I mean, like just look down and think what are your strengths in a game of basketball. Like, are you a knockdown shooter? Can you sprint to the corner, stay spaced in the corner, not creep up on a dribble penetration, and catch and shoot the basketball? And it might be simple things like as that, but I mean at tryouts. And are we talking about senior tryouts or are we talking about junior tryouts,
I think
or just anything in general?
it is more relative to seniors, but across the board, just
Yeah, so I mean, like coaches can't have like you can't have a team where all 10 guys want to just get after the basketball and just take it to the rack and drop 40 like every single night. Like those teams just don't work. Um, so what you need to do, and probably more so as a senior player, is like I said before, have that conversation with yourself. Find out, write down what your strengths are. It might be playing off pick and roll. You might be an amazing screener. That's your role. Like, hey, I set really good screens. And or your basketball IQ, like, hey, I set really good screens and I know where to come off and what the defense is doing. So there's heaps of roles in a game of basketball. You don't have to be that guy that always like top scores. But just sit down with yourself and have that conversation around, hey, what my role is, or what would my role look like?
yeah.
Because I know, like for me personally, like I could slightly put the ball to the floor and like occasionally get into the key, but like my comfort zone was just outside on the 3-point line. Like that's where I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
What about you when you were a player?
Yeah, like as you were speaking, I was just thinking about my experiences and going to that. It's a lot of acceptance, I think. You know, there is a lot of outside noise by, I know, during my playing time of, I'd say friends or family and saying, oh, have a good game and, um, I hope you play well, and it's looked at as from outside noise. If you score heaps, that means you're playing well. So I think it only took me until, let's say 18's top age to understand what is my role. And I always knew, what things that I was good at and what things I, wasn't so good at. And then I really understood it during youth league. When I went from playing in 18s or, most of my playing career as a starter, playing, 30 minutes plus, to playing on a youth league team where I was getting 2 to 5 minutes per game. So I guess for me, it took until, okay, I wasn't getting, that court time. And I had to sit back and say, okay, assess where I'm at, what I do bring to the team and what I can bring to a team, and not try and do things that, that I wasn't as capable as others to do, and just being accepting in that. And I think that was, a big turning point for me. and especially more importantly for the team. So, I think, just to cover that is just accepting, where you're at in certain aspects of your game, on both the good and the areas that need to be improved.
Yeah, and I mean, look, when everyone's growing up, they want to be that, like, the really good player. Like everyone wants to start off and be that really good player. I don't think anyone, when they start sport, as they're going through the ranks, is like, oh yeah, let me be like that 10th guy. Let me be that 10th guy on the team. I don't think anyone thinks like that. But like you said, you just need to be able to assess, and it's going to be obviously a little bit easier for senior players to assess where their abilities are at. And it doesn't mean that if you're a really good shooter from the corner, that you can't put the ball to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just need to find different avenues. It might be like, hey, I can put the ball on the floor after a pump fake as the guy's closing out to me, and that's how I can get to the rim. Yeah, whereas maybe you're not as comfortable as being able to take a person off the dribble to get to the rim.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Straight up one-on-one, yeah.
And a story for that for myself, and I've told this a couple times to a few people.
Mate, I thought you were going to throw me under the bus there with old age on a Monday night.
No, I won't.
Slow and steady, no?
I won't go.
Mate, I can attack the rim.
I don't know if I'll go through that path for Paris's playing career as where he is now, but yeah, it's not a good side on the court at the moment for him with his ankle. But now, on a serious note, for me as a player, for my first season of youth, and the guys that I played with that know, I went from 2 to 5 minutes per game, quite a slim frame. I wasn't happy with where I was, in terms of court time, and how I was playing at that point. Shooting percentage wasn't high, whatever. And then I sat back after that season, and I said, okay, it's either I put my head down, work on myself in terms of my playing, hit the gym. Then that following year, I said to myself, okay, so that following season, I'm going to hit the gym, or I'm going to gain some muscle, gain some weight. I think I put on between 8 to 10 kilos. I got a lot stronger because I was getting pushed around that year by, older guys. I was, 18, 19 at the time, getting pushed around by, 22-year-olds. Worked on my shot and focused on those things that I can bring to the team, and that was rebounding, defense, and shooting. I said those are the 3 things that I can dominate my role in, and that's what I can bring to the team. So I think it's after a season or before a season, say, okay, these are the things that I can bring. These are the things I want to dominate in this season. Go out and do that. In training's trial and error, new things, when you're doing your individual work, work on things that do need improving on. But during the game sense and, during those games, I think focus on what, where you can strive and be great at.
Because, you're still working on that defensive end, aren't you? They haven't watched Monday night games, mate.
Yeah.
The traffic cone.
I call myself the defensive.
Okay, here we go. Just on that, if you're one who wants to get some cheap points, and that's what gives you some confidence, like the most easiest thing to do is to be able to run the floor. Because you think about when a shot goes up on the perimeter and you're closing out to that guy and you have like a little mini leak out, like if you have 3 of them a game, that's 6 layups. And then if you get fouled as well, like you're already on like 8 or 10 points.
Yeah.
And like how easy is it to, like when you close out and contest someone on the perimeter, to leak out, obviously not too early until your team's kind of collected the ball, but when your team's going to get the rebound or not, just with a simple head turn, and then just sprint down the other way. Like that's just easy points.
I'm intrigued to know for you as a player, and I'll share my perspective after you. What's your mindset currently and at the moment when you even play on a senior game, but as a player in your prime, what was your mindset going in at a scoring end? Were you someone who, okay, these are the points where I can score from, these are the ways I can score, or were you just letting the game come to you? What was your mindset, going into games? If you,
Yeah, easy. I think if you wait for the game to come to you, the game's over before you kind of like the game's over. You'll be waiting all the time. Um, like I think for me, I guess my happy place was around mid range. So that's saying my age because no longer do we want to take mid range shots. But I guess for me, mid range was kind of where I felt at home. So if I could get into the mid range, I felt like I could either take my guy off the dribble or just raise up and shoot the basketball. So I mean, obviously depends on offense and that kind of thing. But my mentality was, well, I'm a shooter, so I need to shoot the basketball. I maybe don't need to get to the ring, but I like every time the ball comes to me, can I shoot the ball? Am I open? And it might be like the hand is down. Well, that's classified as open, or the guy's laid on a closeout, so I'll shoot that. But I think for young players, they're just hesitant to shoot the basketball. And what I tell my kids or the young people that I coach, shoot 10 shots. Like, just shoot 10 shots in a game. No coach is going to come out and say, don't shoot the ball. So, like, if the coach is not going to say, hey, don't shoot the basketball, keep shooting the ball. And then, obviously, if you shoot the ball more, you'll eventually score more.
that's it.
So that was my mindset. Anytime I caught the basketball, I was like, am I open? If I'm not open, like, what the defense is doing, can I attack a closeout for a pass,
Yeah.
like a drive and pass or drive and kick?
Yeah.
But I mean, you'll probably be the same. You were, yeah, a sniper, mate, from three. So anytime the ball comes to you, you're
Well,
not passing it at all.
well, if just to touch on what you just said, you said you are a shooter. You mean you were a shooter? If you have a look at Paris on a Monday night, yeah.
Amazing.
But nah, it's
Amazing.
I've got the same. I'd said I had the same mindset, just knowing of where I can get my points from. From the 3-point range, back cuts. I always used to go in and do a fake handoff. That was one way where I knew, I could get my 2 points. Like you said before, it was really good to mention running the lanes, just leaking out off a long three, and just getting quick points off that. And I do know one year I knew my role at 16s. I think it was 16 bottom, 16 ones or 16 twos. One of those seasons was I set a goal for myself during the game, saying, okay, I'm going to get 5 points a game because I know my role is a scorer in that team, and if I can score, I can help my team win. So that was my mentality. I did change it throughout the years, but during that team, I knew, okay, if I can do that, not force shots, just try and get shots that were good for me, in a sense that they were they were a good option. But yeah, it was a bit of trial and error. It did work that season, in saying that was my role. So I think there are a few different sort of mindsets if I look at from 12s to all the way through to youth league. Whereas the youth league mindset was, okay, smash the boards, don't let my offensive players score and shoot when I'm open. So yeah, it's quite. I'd say there's a few different mindsets over the time.
No, I agree with you. I think if you can break even with your, like, obviously opposition, so the guy that you're playing on, then you've kind of done your job, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, to wrap it up, just want to ask you one last question. What are your career goals? In the coaching field. What do you? Let's say let's go from a 1 year, 5 year, and a 10-year standpoint.
Man, I haven't really thought about my 10-year standpoint. I guess for me, the next step or progression would be to obviously head coach an NBL1 team. And and then after that, who knows? Like, I mean, anyone who's got aspirations in coaching is going to be like, well, I would love to go overseas, or coach professionally here, or go over to America and like assist a college team, or coach a college team. And then obviously end up in the NBA. Like, that's the dream, I feel like, for every coach, that obviously wants to come in and progress through their coaching and eventually end up somewhere. So I guess, without giving you my 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year plan, I've kind of given you like everything all in one. But yeah, next year probably. Well, I don't want to say 1 year, because 1 year I feel like I'll still be an NBL1 assistant, and I don't think I'll be ready for head coaching an NBL1 team. But I'm just happy at the moment just to learn, and just progress that way. I think too many times young coaches just want to jump in and obviously take the best team that they possibly can, when they're not ready, or might not be a good fit. But yeah, and coaching's kind of a little bit of luck as well. Like, sometimes you've just got to be at the right place at the right time, and the fit's got to be really good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I agree. Yeah, networking is one of the biggest things during your playing and coaching career. So I think, if you can meet as many players and coaches as you can, and stay in contact with them, I think you can say, and I can say ourselves, that you never know who you'll end up speaking to in the future, in your coaching career. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. I think, appreciate your time coming on, and I know a lot of players and coaches who do listen will take a lot out from it. So yeah, appreciate your time on, being a part of it and being on episode 1.
I know, mate. Big news. Thank you for having me on episode 1. Can't wait to see what you do with it.
That's it. All right, we'll wrap it up there, guys. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll be uploaded to YouTube, hopefully Spotify, and there'll be some cuts on Instagram. So all right, see you guys, and see you on episode 2.
See ya.